Hey, welcome back guys to Intermediate JavaScript and jQuery programming with JSON and Ajax. My name is Kaustubh Gharge, but you can call me KG. We will be working on our second project for this Intermediate JavaScript course today. Before we begin, let's look at the session outline. So in this session, we will first review our previous project, then start working on a new project where we will build a login form. We will learn how to get the user inputted data and use Ajax to send this data to an API service and authenticate the user. Moving on. Again, as a reminder, if you have not taken Fundamentals to JavaScript Programming before, then you must take the Introduction to JavaScript course, as well as HTML to understand the document object model. So in the previous project, we actually worked on manipulating the DOM. We built a simple image swap gallery where we used the jQuery functions to figure out the mouse events and change the active image within the gallery. Okay, so we worked on manipulating the DOM, but in this project we'll be working on something a bit advanced. We'll be working on Ajax calls. So in this project we'll be covering the most common functionality on the web today, that is the user authentication. You've seen this functionality for various sites and applications that you use. There are various ways in which a user can be authenticated. However, we're going to cover the most traditional way of using an email and a password. But however, I strongly encourage you, after you're done with this and you're confident enough that you can handle the user authentication using email and password, you should look into the two-factor authentication when you can use some third-party authentication libraries. But moving on, again, as a reminder, make sure you have the Google Chrome browser and code editor like Visual Studio Code installed on your computer. The project source code files are available on my GitHub page. You can download them and review the code if you get stuck at any point during the session. So now we have everything in order. Let's begin. So let's begin by creating a simple form with two input boxes and a button. I'm going to be using Bootstrap to make them look better. So I have the basic boilerplate code ready so that we can quickly jump into the jQuery side and figure out how we can provide the user authentication data to the backend server. All right, so what I have now with me here is a basic boilerplate code. I have included jQuery as well as Bootstrap, and I've also included my main.js file in which we'll be writing most of our code. Okay, so let's quickly review this HTML body. So I have a simple form element in which we have email address and password, and a button to submit the email and the password to the backend. And I also have a div where I will show the message for the user if the login information is correct or incorrect. So let's quickly run this and see how this looks. So this is how the form actually looks. And if I go to the inspect element, I don't think I have any JavaScript written right now, so let's avoid that for now. But I just have a simple form with two fields and a button. Let's go back and write some jQuery. All right, so now first thing is obviously we have to make sure that the document is ready. So I'll say document dot ready and pass in a function. All right, so now the first thing is we have to listen to the on submit event for the form. So if you go back to the index.html, we already have a form, and first thing we have to do is listen to the submit event. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put an ID of the form. So it's login form. Oops. All right, and I'm going to listen for the submit event, and I'm going to get the information from the form. Okay, so if I save this and if I go back, I need the information from the input email. Let me close this email as well as the password. So I'll be using the ID to get the data from them. All right, so and I'll store them in a variable. So let me create a variable first. I'll say username, and I will use the jQuery user email dot value, and I'm going to use the trim function. So the trim function actually removes any white space before or after the characters. Okay, I'll create the same one for the password, and I'm just going to reuse this and change this to password. All right, perfect. Now we're going to use the Ajax function, but before we do that, we have to make sure that we have the server running. So in this case, for this particular project, I have quickly built a server right here that is available on my GitHub page. So let me quickly open this up, and in here I'm going to just running this particular command. It says npm run, not npm run or npm start, and it's going to start my server. That's all you have to do. If you want, you can take a look at the code. It's simple Node.js server that's running, and we only looking to see if the email is of test at testdata.com, as well as its password is password. Okay, so make sure you have the server running. Going back to the jQuery, now in here, the first thing we are going to check if the user email and password are not blank, right? So I'm going to use an if statement, and I'm going to say if the username not equal to blank and password not equal to blank. All right, so if this is true, then I'm going to run the Ajax. Let me quickly close this. I'm going to write the Ajax code. So we'll say jQuery.ajax, and we'll pass in the parameters. Okay, so the URL that we're going to log in is the local host. Okay, so I'm going to say URL. I'm just going to copy the server URL that I have. Oops. Okay, and I'm going to be listening to the login, so I'm just going to say login. Okay, now the type for this Ajax request is, can you guess it? It is post, because we're sending in the data, right? So we are not getting anything. It won't be get, it will be post. It can be get too. You can even send data using the get, but it's best if you send using the post. Okay, so the content type is the form data. So I'm going to say application form URL encoded. So this is the data format that the server requires, so I have provided to it. And in here I'm going to just send the data. So I'm going to say email, and I'm going to use the username. Quickly shorten this. Username and password is password. All right, perfect. Now we're going to see, we're going to have to make sure we add events. We handle the success as well as the failure events. So I'll say success, and I'll call it a function. In here I'll get the response. Right. Now let's actually print this response out on the HTML, because since if you look at the HTML code, I have created a special div to show the response from the server. So I'm just going to call this and attach response to this. Okay, so let me quickly go back here and create a blank variable and assign this the response. Okay, and in here I'm going to get the message div and attach it as an HTML. So I'll say HTML message. Oops. All right, and for the error, we'll use the same way. Instead of catching a response, we'll catch an error, and I will just reuse this, and instead of response, I'll say error.response text. All right, perfect. And I have to make sure that the form doesn't jump because of the traditional event property. So I'll just say event dot prevent default. All right, perfect. Let me save this, make sure everything is in order. So we have two variables. I'm getting the data from the user, and I'm just passing that data inside the Ajax function in the data object, and depending on the success or error of the response from the server, I'm going to display it to the user. So let's quickly run this. Say open with live server, and the way the server is configured is it is only going to take test at test.com and password as password. So I'm going to see if these two fields work. All right, so it says user with test at test.com logged in successfully. So we have entered the correct details. So what if we enter the password incorrectly? So let me enter something else. Let me enter 1 2 3 4 5 and submit it. It says wrong password. Okay, so the message is being sent to us by the server, and all of the verification is done by the server and not on the front end. Okay, so that's good. So I'll say password, submit. It says correctly. What happens if we enter the email address wrong? So let's say I entered test2 at test.com. What happens then? It says the user account for test2 at test.com does not exist. So again, the configuration is set in the server. For the purpose of this project, we're only concerned with the Ajax, right? So that's why you can use this server, or you can, if you have an access to a different authentication server, you can use it there. All you have to do is make sure you follow the server's data format. So this is data format that we have for our existing server. It requires the object with the values for email and password, as well as the content type. So make sure you have both of those. Okay, so perfect. So perfect. Now that we are done with the login form, we are done with the project too. So we actually created an HTML form by using simple form element and using a bit of Bootstrap. We used the Ajax call to log into the server. We made sure that we used document.getReady to see if to make sure that the jQuery is actually seeing if the HTML has actually been loaded, and we used the Ajax function and used the request type of post, and we handle the response. So that is it. That's the end of project 2. I will see you in the next project. Thank you.